Well, welcome everybody to today's webinar. Our topic today is proof of presence technology, what businesses stand to gain, and why customers demand data. I'm Stephanie Ambrose, Chief Marketing Officer with Invisible Sun Technology, and joining me today is Ben Delaney, Chief Commercial Officer with ExactComms, and John Kinzier, CEO of Invisible Sun Technology. Ben, I'd like to go ahead and start with you and ask, how is customer demand for real-time data and proof of service delivery shaping business expectations today?
Yeah, no, thanks, Stephanie, for the introduction. So, you know, just maybe to step back a small bit. So my experience is in the automation side of moving ahead in life. I started on the heavy industry side and then quickly realized that in the facility management, in the commercial, the building environment, that there's a huge amount of potential for both resource and asset automation in real time, amongst the industry. So, from an engineering perspective, which is where I came from, what we like to do is, bring real-time evaluation of what people are doing to every level of the business. And, in doing that, what happens is that, you're measuring off of a path that, that has a baseline that's very real. So, if we take for instance, either a cleaning or a security environment on the FM stage, what we like to do is we like to, assist both the cleaning and the security people in that they understand exactly, what their tasks are and how they go about their tasks without any other kind of, any other interference with their tasks. And today, what we see in the environment, what we don't have today in this FM environment is we don't have a real-time approach to what we're doing. And every time that, a cleaner or security person or, an engineer, electrical, mechanical has to do something, we ask them to tap, scan, or sign something, which is really, an interference in their role. So they go to site to perform a role, and we ask them to do something that's outside of that role. So what we've deployed with the Invisible Sun ExactComms solution is a real-time management system, which enables people to do their role, complete their status quo, perform at a high level in what they're doing, without having to tap, scan, or sign, because all that is done in the background automatically through our solution, which is very much automated through Bluetooth and technology-driven solutions. Okay.
That's great. John, do you have anything to add there?
Well, I think when we're looking at the solutions that are out there with tapping and scanning, we know that people that are working in environments, including whether it's at the lowest level or highest level, we aren't necessarily as consistent as we need to be. And what we're bringing to the table is that consistency that people are looking for. Clients are, the clients of our customers are demanding more. That what they're looking for are solutions to know that things that are actually happening, and they're conditioned to have data to prove it. And now they're demanding it of the FM companies and the real estate companies to say, this is what we need this real-time data to be able to prove that things are actually happening and you're complying to the scope. Because again, there's liability that can happen along with that. So if somebody slips and falls because we didn't clean something, that liability passes along through the chain, and organizations understand that, and they want that compliance and that backup to know that things are being done the way they're supposed to.
Yeah, that's interesting, talking about liability, and I'm wondering, are there other compelling operational benefits that organizations have experienced after adopting the proof of presence technology?
Yeah, I think Stephanie, this golden thread of digital record inspection is a kind of a new term that's been, it's been talked about in the industry, right? And you know, the adoption, the new adoption of AI and digitization is now, it's now kind of a compelling effect on the FM industry also. And this golden thread of digital record inspection is something whereby you're looking for one complete system to operationally cover all aspects of what you're trying to do, whereby it's a proof of presence, whereby it's a PM scheduling rota, whereby it's a digital auditing tool, a documentation support tool. All the FM companies are looking for this type of solution in one single pane of glass. And that's what we're trying to do with the Invisible Sun ExactComm solution, which trying is probably something I should probably not say. That's what we're doing. But also, as we work together as part of the whole innovation of what we're doing together as part of the digitization, the innovation, and the move to AI as part of FM and compliance, I think, that's the direction we're taking and that's where we're going. Okay.
All right. Well, going back to our topic, I'm kind of curious, and maybe this is occasionally the elephant in the room, but I'm wondering, how do we effectively communicate the value of this technology to clients without triggering, privacy concerns among staff?
So, John, you want to take that, or will I take it?
Let me start with that. So I think privacy is a big issue. We want to make sure that data is protected, that people don't feel like they're being spied on. But I think there's a lot of benefits to the types of solution that we're delivering. We were on a conversation yesterday, and someone can be doing their job, complete what they did, and without the proper documentation, they have no way of supporting what happened. And what our solution is doing for them is giving them that documentation saying, we know you were in this location. We know that you completed the scope based on the time that we've allotted. And it allows us to go back to say, maybe something else happened, right? It's easy to blame the folks that aren't, that aren't necessarily in the room. But it gives you that credibility and capability to say, yeah, I did my job and I did it very well. So I think from that perspective, privacy, we in the corporate world, we also, if you have a corporate phone, if you have a corporate laptop, you are being monitored. Things are happening. This is a positive way of actually monitoring what's going on. And it reduces the overhead that person has to do, right? Because it's automated, it's automatic, and hands-free. So you don't really have to do anything, just do your job, and things will, kind of take care of themselves. And what we find is that once people experience it, they're like, oh, this is pretty good. This is kind of awesome, versus, oh my goodness, this is a terrible thing. So I think from that perspective, it is a perception. But I think the reality oversteps the challenge that you might have pretty quickly. So, Finn, what would you add to that? So Finn, why don't you add on to what I was talking about around the value that clients are getting and around the privacy issue and how to offset that concern.
Yeah, so I think so the value is seen across multiple streams. So if we think from the user point of view, the value is in I want to go to work, I want to do my job, I want to go home. I don't want to be accountable for signing, tapping, scanning. I want to I know what I have to do, I know my scope of work, and I want to do it. So what our system is, it's an automated system. It doesn't disrupt what people are doing. It's a non-intrusive environment in that it picks it up automatically. It's an automated solution. And we alert on the basis of what people are doing to help them to complete their jobs. From a management perspective, it helps them to be able to decide on, this is what my compliance level should be. Here's what I want to achieve this month. This is what my SLA agreement is with my customer. This is where I need to be. And, you set targets on the basis of that via KPIs or, your SLA agreements or whatever is acceptable within a company. On a reporting mechanism, all the reporting is all automated on the basis of both resource allocation, asset allocation, be it, cleaning appliances, security staff, whatever that may be, vehicle staff, whatever that may be. So we kind of encompass all that into, an enterprise dashboard, which is customizable depending on what the client may require. And they can drive that type of customization to fit the benefits of each and every different requirement that their customer needs via, service level agreement, KPI agreement, monthly targets, whatever that may be. I think then on the documentation side, which is a huge win, you got your compliance, resource, asset management, you got, reporting, but the documentation side, you have one suppository for everything, which means your audit compliance, audit tracking, audit performance is all in one system. It's there for many, many years, and, people can take advantage of the data at a single touch of a button. And then you show exactly, what you're doing as a business. And, it's putting people, on the front foot with winning more and more business. Okay.
Okay, great. And then, from an implementation standpoint, any challenges there?
Zero challenges. The biggest, so even today, we just did an implementation today in a shopping mall in Dubai. And the biggest headache we've had is just connecting to the Wi-Fi network. That took probably all of about 10 minutes to resolve. Just get passwords associated, make sure everything was good on the ground. And, even in the event of having an issue with Wi-Fi, we bring our own Wi-Fi with us through a Wi-Fi dongle, which is a very, very small cost on a monthly fee with regards to sending data to the cloud and, ensuring that, you've got that interoperability between what you're doing and what's being displayed on the dashboard. So, it's a very quick win. I think, John, what's your slogan on this?
I think, especially in the US where getting onto a client's network is not necessarily the easiest thing. That would be the biggest challenge, and we bring our own. We're going to be implementing our own Wi-Fi in every installation, for the simple fact that going through that security audit is pretty challenging moving forward. So we want it to be the hardest thing in implementing this solution is getting the 3M sticker ready so that you can stick the beacon in the location that you want to get to. Again, when we think about all of it, we try to streamline and simplify every aspect of it so that we can be in and out installed and the client can be up and running in hours, not weeks or months going forward. And again, there's some, I think the back end is where we're going to get, a little bit more engaged with the client. What information do you actually want to have? What do you want to see? What kind of alerts do you need? Right? The actual implementation is pretty simple, but that part of it becomes the real heart and soul of the solution, which then pushes, hey, this is out of scope for us or out of compliance for us. How do I manage that? What happens if we have different scenarios? We have two tags that are supposed to be together aren't together, or two that shouldn't be together are for over a certain period of time, right? All of those issues or exceptions we can begin to implement through the solution so that we now can track and monitor the type of information that a client wants to see. And then the last piece of that would be, hey, does that data need to go anywhere? We've got a full API in the back end where that, again, a little bit more advanced. And then maybe I'm uploading that data to a time and attendance solution, or maybe I'm pushing that up to a larger facility dashboard, right? Again, we talk about implementation, we think about the physical hardware, but really it's about data, right? What we're providing is data in what I would look at as a desert, right? There's very little data that you can pull today in some of these soft FM services and some of the harder FM services where do we really know that a PM is done? Do we really know that something actually happened? Were they there long enough? So again, we're providing that kind of insight, and that data is the most important component, which again, if you've ever worked with data, it can be a little bit more challenging, but overall, that's pretty straightforward for us to deliver.
Now I want to pull on that thread a little bit, and I'm curious, how does the proof of presence data actually improve decision making? You know, both the operational level and maybe even the executive level.
Yeah, so I think Stephanie, you know, that's a great question, which is often not part of what the initial proposal will be about, right? So
Right.
A typical FM environment is here's our scope of work, here's what we need to do, you know, here's the the hourly requirement or the people requirement or the asset requirement. So you have a capital investment, an OPEX investment, you know, to achieve whatever the agreement will be. But, you know, if you look at, you know, the typical question you've asked is, you know, on the operational side, on the executive side, they're always thinking about how can we do business in a much easier fashion? How can we take some traction from this ourselves? And, you know, the best way to do that is to measure from the ground up. So understand exactly what's your business doing on the ground, who operationally is the most effective, who might need some help, what tasks are we struggling to achieve? Are we hitting compliance with this customer? Is it being more of a tricky customer that we need to maybe work more on this side of things? So having the data enables people to be more kind of predictive and prescriptive about where they push resources or push personnel at, right? And that then enables the higher management, you know, the operational landscape or the executive landscape to understand more about what's happening on the ground, bring that through in a real-time evaluation, you know, exactly what's happening on a day-to-day level, and be able to make those kind of fluid and flexible changes with regards to what's required to both operationally achieve the target that's required, but also, you know, from an internal compliance level with cost control, understand what's that, how are we doing, you know, are we being too cost effective? Are we not being cost effective enough? Do we need to invest more time? Do we need to have a chat with the customer and say, listen, we believe that the landscape here is, you know, through the data we have, makes us much more intelligent to be able to fit this out in a better position to make it better for both companies and work together into the future. And then it becomes more of a partnership approach rather than a kind of a day-to-day approach. All right. You're working more of an outcome basis, more of a KPI basis, rather than, you know, thinking on a day-to-day level where, you know, it's like I win, you win, then it becomes more of a win-win together. Right. That's where we're going.
Well, yeah, so that's kind of like you're leading to really, you know, maybe it's a conversation about real world examples and how has this data, you know, strengthened client relationships or even helped to build new business.
Yeah, so come here, John, I can give some typical examples that I know. You know, for us, we've seen in 3 days of data where a particular cleaning company working in the healthcare environment, you know, has been, you know, battle hardened, I would say, you know, always fighting the fight to, you know, say, we've got X amount of cleaners on the basis of where we are today. But, you know, the hospital environment is kind of moving, the standards are moving higher and higher. We're struggling to keep up with the resource allocation we have. And, they were struggling with the data to evaluate and back up their claim that, we need more, right? So within 3 days of data and being able to demonstrate that, this particular person, this particular asset was in an allocated area for X amount of time. This is the throughput on a heat map, exactly what happened. And then you have a higher conversation with, again, like the last question, with the operational and management people, with both quality and infectious diseases, to say that, this is not enough now for the standards we're looking for, and with the growth rate of what our capacity is with a footprint point of view. So that typical environment enabled this customer, who will be a cleaning customer, to take on 2 more staff per floor on a cleaning perspective, be able to provide due diligence through the data we provided them. They actually took more revenue, more margin from it, but the standards and the infectious diseases increase, the benefits increase on the customer side, because, they made the investment based on typical data, which provided that kind of the level of support they needed to make that investment.
And on that use case around healthcare, everybody can say, well, how can I afford to add 2 more cleaners per floor? Well, I'm not sure what the numbers are in Europe, but in the US, every infection cost a hospital between $20,000 and $40,000 per incident, right? So if you have 10 incidents, 100 incidents, right, those numbers begin to skyrocket, right? So now, for the first time, they'll be able to turn to their EVS staff, which is basically their cleaning staff, and say, how are we complying with our policies, procedures, the CDC requirements around that? We can tell whether the cleaners are there, whether they did their job. Because again, I think we've all been in, especially in the US, in a hospital, which can be a pretty hectic place. And again, driving, improving hygiene in a hospital from our solution can drive those numbers. And some of these hospital systems are spending millions, if not tens of millions of dollars in unreimbursable costs that really go back down to the idea of cleaning, right? So our solution gives the ability to see what's happening on the ground and then roll that data up. Now, is it the whole solution in a hospital? No. Absolutely. It needs to be tied together with robotics and autonomous cleaning devices, misters, good policy, good education along with it. But being able to understand that data is really, really critical to improving the healthcare system in the US. And again, that profit, that cost that they're spending goes right to the bottom line if you can eliminate it. So again, it's cost avoidance more so than revenue generation. So I think there's a big story in the healthcare system that we can tell, that we can actually have a big impact, as we begin to kind of grow in that sector.
I think just I know we're running out of time, Stephanie, but one important thing to add here is in the environment of the commercial landscape or the mall landscape, shopping mall landscape, we've been proven to defeat claims of up to 80% increase of public liability claims year over year, due to the historian data we have, whereby a company, where if you've just got video evidence or camera evidence, you cannot record that forever. You lose that data. Where somebody comes at you maybe 6 months later, 8 months later for a claim, you historically have the data to say, well, we had the cleaners in place here. Here's what the asset management was. We've had security in place here during this time. So the data is recorded historically forever, and it enables companies, to be able to take on that claim, which can be quite, the monetary value can be quite serious, depending on what the claim is. But it enables them to be able to fight more claims with much more important data than they previously had before, because they relied on the camera video type evidence, which was not, which was lost after a certain period of time. So, we've been seen to reduce public liability claims by up to 80% in those common areas, which is quite significant.
Wow, it is. We are at time, but I'd like to go ahead and, open it up for any additional comments or questions. Okay, then.
Jeffrey, we'd like your question if you have it now.
You're muted.
Oh, you're muted. Oh.
I think I'm unmuted now. Can you hear me?
Maybe put it in the chat.
Yeah, we can. Well, you're back to being Donald Duck.
Oh, I hate that. Okay. I still see you there.
So.
All right, we'll get it in the chat.
Jeffrey, I muted you because we're getting.
I have a question, unless I also sound like Donald Duck.
You do not, John.
Pleased to hear that.
So the question is this an ERP related issue?
John, you want to take that?
Yeah, go ahead, Finn.
So when you say ERP, give me, because that's a large abbreviation. Do you know what it is, John? Is employee representation performance or?
Hang on. Typing.
Let's wait for it.
It's coming. So I see this as a resource allocation solution as well as an effectiveness and compliance solution. Is that a fair answer?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think Stephanie, you posed those questions during the webinar. From a resource allocation, it can help with resource allocation, but it's driven by compliance. So I think the resource allocation is really driven by your SLA agreement and what's determined by the contract or the agreement. How both parties assess that is probably different depending on where you sit, but at least this is a solution which drives a compliance level that we both agree with, and the resource allocation then is fit to meet that requirement based on what we believe the standards are and the time requirements are for each task. All right. And then, on a compliance level, we measure compliance on not just a minute by minute, but by a second by second basis. So compliance for us is everything. And we believe compliance is what drives the whole effectiveness of the solution. All right. And by looking at compliance rather than each individual task, you can, both the vendor and the supplier and the customer and the asset owner can get together and have data they can trust to make prescriptive decisions, that are not biased or unbiased or non-biased basis, that determine the result they want. All right. So if you think that, our weekly summary report indicates exactly where compliance levels fall, if you want to throw more resource at that, you can do it, but it may be a matter of how you balance it out. But our data gives you a much more balanced effectiveness of how you can evaluate where the resource allocation needs to go to, which in turn drives the effectiveness and the SLA agreement, where both the customer, the supplier, and the end user of the asset is happy with what's going on, or is it's effective anyway. Okay.
And I think from from not only just allocation, because allocation to me just means, hey, look, I'm going to put employees here, and the question is, do we really need them, and are they doing what they're supposed to do, right? And an example might be in a corporate office on Friday afternoon, your cleaning crew who's going in and inspecting a restroom, for example, is only in for 5 minutes when it's normally 20. Well, we know what a corporate office in the summer looks like on a Friday afternoon, right? It may be that from an allocation perspective, we've allocated that resource, but from a realistic perspective, we don't necessarily need to spend 20 minutes doing X when we could allocate that resource to doing something else that's maybe more productive. Or conversely, right, we have a piece of equipment that isn't being utilized. We've invested in it. It's not being utilized exactly the way we expect it to be on certain days. And we can then explore why that's not happening, and really pinpoint a root cause around it. So again, we're providing data, and how people use that data is going to vary based on the circumstance. But it really, in one regard, empowers the employee to do their job, and then when they're questioned about it, say, yeah, right, this is what the landscape looks like. Well, great, now people are informed, and they can use that resource to do something else. Or, hey, why are we not using the ride-alongs that we have for cleaning on these certain days? Well, there's no management that day, right? So all of a sudden we know that things aren't necessarily happening. So again, that gives us a way of really validating those resources are needed and they're being optimized and used correctly around that. And in the scenario that we talked about, maybe we need more, right? Because you've asked us to do something that is unrealistic. And now we have data to prove that around it. So again, I think overall it helps everyone through the supply chain in an area which is pretty much, let's face it, right? These services, right? If you hire a landscaper for your own, for your own property, there's sometimes a question whether they're going to show up on time, whether they're going to be there, when they're going to be there, were they there long enough? All of that, and then multiply that by a portfolio of buildings. All of a sudden you've got a significant management issue, and that's what really we solve for, right? And again, think about the frustration you have when you don't know when somebody's going to be there, and multiply it. That's the real problem statement that we solve in this process.
Great. Thank you very much for joining us today, and hopefully you'll join us next month as well. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Stephanie. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.